realize that as a daughter of the Son of the Most High, you are called to live above the systems of the earth, okay? You start to show up differently. You start to treat the people around you differently. You start to treat yourself differently. When you see yourself the way Christ sees you, you have no option but to show up differently. You have no option but to show up as a king and a queen of the Most High, as a daughter walking her royal mentality, as a king walking in his king mentality, okay? You have no option but to show up as the healed, refined, whole, evolved version of yourself, because that is the level God is calling you to as you move from faith to faith and glory to glory, honey. You are elevating, you are maturing, you are evolving. You don't have time to remain at the same level in and out of season, okay? In and out of season, you are evolving. Every revolution you make around this earth, you are a completely different person. Completely different, matured, evolved, enlightened spirit. You know you're here to serve. Serving is not beyond you. It's not beneath you. You're here to build for the kingdom and glorify your king, okay? And when you realize that that is your identity, that that is your entire purpose and calling on this earth, okay, you start to show up differently. There's not a job on earth that can separate you from the purpose God has placed inside of you. You will not be able to succumb to a mediocre, average life because you know you're called to greater. You will not be okay accepting less than you deserve, less than the King has etched out for you in destiny, because your destiny has your name on it. You wouldn't walk away from something that has your name on it. Come on now. That has your unique ID fingerprint all over it. God has already carved out a path for you, and all you have to do is say yes and journey with him in spite of the opposition, okay? So I do want to talk about two more things before we wrap up this Struggles of a Faith Walk content. And that is walking with God versus working with God, okay? So this is another way that we can distinguish people who are walking with us, who are purposed to journey with us on our path, and those who simply claim the name of God, okay? Because there are non-believers, people who just will not understand our path. And then there are lukewarm believers, people who have been introduced to the idea of God, who may be in and out of church circles, but they do not inherently have a deep, genuine, intimate relationship with God, okay? So there is a difference between being on heaven's payroll and being on heaven's roll call. Come on now. There's a difference between working for God, as in occupying an official church position, as in attending church every weekend, or attending service, or even hosting service, working in ministry, okay? Because you can occupy all these different roles and still not inherently have the relationship with Jesus Christ, okay? There is a big difference between being on heaven's payroll, as in you collect a check as a pastor every week, without having the Holy Spirit dwelling within you. And that is absolutely happening in today's churches, pulpits, pews, okay? We absolutely have churchgoers without having Christians in the church. We have churchgoers and we don't have Christians in the church, okay? We have pastors, but we don't have believers. We have leaders, but they are void of any spiritual discipline to lead. So there is a big difference between being on heaven's payroll and versus being on heaven's roll call. Honey, when you're on heaven's roll call, God is always queuing up your name, assigning you to do things on earth, okay? You are in communion with the heavenly realm, okay? With God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You're in communion and in frequent fellowship with the Godhead. And God is always deploying you and preparing you and sending you out, developing you, and then deploying you to assignments here on earth. You're walking with, led by the Holy Spirit. You commune with Jesus Christ. You serve an omnipotent Father, our omnipotent Father. You serve the Almighty King. You're on heaven's roll call. Your name's always being called up for something. You're always being deployed somewhere. And you're not necessarily doing it because you occupy an official role in church. You don't even have to be a pastor to serve God. You really don't. You can serve God in any capacity as long as you have the Holy Spirit dwelling within you. You are called to serve, okay? You don't have to occupy an official role, title, or position to serve the kingdom. And some people think because they have the official title or position that they are on heaven's roll call. You are just working for the kingdom. You're not walking with the King, okay? And that applies for both believers and folks who walk with God, and folks who claim to walk with God, I would say. There's a big difference, honey. Okay, working for God and walking with God is stark difference. It's good if you do both, okay, if you walk with the Spirit and if you also work for God, so in ministry, in his body, stuff like that. But just because you walk with God doesn't mean you're limited to working for God. God can deploy his servants, his children in any industry across this globe, okay? So prophets come to mind. That's one of the offices, one of the spiritual offices that God has to equip his body. Prophets are most notably deployed in non-church settings, okay? They're most notably deployed outside of the church, where you will not typically see prophets operating at the height of their gift within a church body. They will be operating in governmental positions, okay? Because it is a governmental office to operate as a prophet, okay? Not just in the spirit of prophecy or with the gift of prophecy, but to be in the office of a prophet. You will be deployed in every sector, industry, and area of work in this life, okay? You can operate as a prophet in any industry in this life. Make no mistake. God will prepare you and deploy you accordingly. So yes, you don't necessarily have to be in a church to be a prophet, to be operating as a mouthpiece for the Lord, okay? And that's something I really want you all to understand, that when you are, facing opposition from people, perhaps it's people who just merely work for God and they don't even necessarily walk with God. Okay, you have a lot of what they call contract Christians who, when the terms of condition are no longer, suiting them, they end their contract. Literally. They will literally give up their position in the church because they're no longer being served by the role they are meant to serve in. You will see people up and leave the church, leave the faith, leave the body, because they're no longer, getting out of it what they feel like they're putting in, and it doesn't work that way. Okay? When you live for a king, you will always be intrinsically rewarded, okay? And God will add the increase for the extrinsic reward, but you will always be poured into the more you pour out as a vessel. And if you're only in this because it's transactional, honey, you're just working for God. And when your contract terms are over, you're out looking for another job. But it doesn't work like that in the kingdom, okay? I really want you all to keep that in mind, okay? So as we wrap up, I just want you to know that God builds from the ground up, okay? Every head started off as a foundation, okay? Started off at the ground level, started from the bottom. And God is using this season of opposition, of testing you, of putting you on the unconventional path to build you up, my dear, because you are the head and not the tail. You are above and not below, okay? You are first and not last. But God has to start you from the last, because it's the last who will become first. So God may do things unconventionally. It may seem backwards. It may seem odd. It may seem insane or crazy for a season. But as a prominent pastor once said, it's really only crazy till it happens. It's only crazy till it happens, my dear. Okay? So I pray that this word encouraged you all. I pray that you all were able to follow with part 1s and part 2s, but this word can absolutely stand alone as its own encouragement. I pray that you all are viewing your unconventional life through a slightly different lens, as well as using the fodder from the opposition to continue to fuel you, okay? Don't let it deter you. Let it fuel you, okay? I pray that you all were inspired, and I will see you all on the other side of your unconventional path.